Top of the hour, we'll be talking to Mark Howitt about Sandy Hook.
Sandy Hook.
The documentary.
Sandy Hook.
Stay tuned.
Thank you.
All I wish is to be alone. Stay away. Don't you invade my home. Best off if you hang outside. Don't come in.
Welcome back, everybody, to Strange Frequencies Radio. In the wake of the tragedy at Sandy Hook Elementary in Newtown, Connecticut, some have expressed concern that the public is not being told the whole truth. We're joined today by Mark Howitt, a Canadian activist, musician, and documentary filmmaker. He's the founder of the World Public Union, a global activist movement formed, he says, to give the power back to the people of the world. His documentaries, such as RFK, Bloodline Assassins, and the James Holmes Conspiracy, have been recommended by people like David Icke, Dan Dix, and Joyce Riley. This year he released Sandy Hook, the documentary, which currently has well over 100,000 views on YouTube. You can check out the documentary as well as find more information about Mark's work at the World Public Union website, which is located at www.worldpublicunion.org. Mark, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. So someone doesn't just wake up one day and decide that there's a conspiracy involving Sandy Hook, or that 9/11 didn't happen the way it looked like. Can you give us a little bit of an idea of, I guess, the journey you've taken to think that major events like this were not being told the whole truth, or that there's gaps in our understanding?
Well, there's a long history of government putting up walls when it comes to certain cases and information regarding events. This has been going on for a long time. It's not anything new. So when people see, either the media telling us false information or not giving us all the facts, another red flag is a gag order. As soon as a gag order is put in place, automatically you can kind of come to the conclusion that, okay, well, there's sensitive information here. They don't want people investigating this information or what's happened. So it happened for me, actually, like you said, with 9/11. I was a bit younger at the time, and when that happened, I was pretty shocked with what I was seeing on the TV and the news reports. So I started keeping a close eye on that case and the news reports that were coming in. And it didn't take long when I started to notice the discrepancies that the media were saying and the government. And, you start to see evidence like the explosions that were heard in the basement of the buildings before the planes actually hit. And there's all this evidence with 9/11 that just, that I would say it's evidence, you know what I mean? It's clear evidence that could be used in a court of law that would convict somebody of wrongdoing or conspiracy, because, let's face it, if there's something like this happening, there would have to be more than one person involved. Okay. And that's what we're seeing with the Sandy Hook case as well. The media was reporting information on the event that wasn't adding up to the actual evidence that we know of today. So there was a lot of people that were questioning the Sandy Hook event, as well as the James Holmes, actually, as well, in Aurora. Okay. There's a lot, and the JFK assassination, Robert Kennedy's assassination. You've got Jonestown, you've got Waco, you've got Ruby Ridge, you've got all these events that have happened, and we've been lied to by the government or the authorities, law enforcement agencies and stuff like that, and the evidence is there. So I just keep a close eye on this stuff, and I like to make documentaries and kind of document it, because a lot of people like watching videos as opposed to reading these days. Sure. So it's a good medium to be able to, do an investigation and show people the information that you found. So
somebody in the chat room just said that the only thing a gag order refers to is that people don't discuss it before a jury hears it. So you want to comment on that?
Well, there's a media gag order where news agencies, medias are not allowed to, they don't release information from the courts, where the actual trial and proceedings are very secretive, you know what I mean? So that's what's happening with the James Holmes case, actually. The media were not allowed to go into the court anymore to listen to the stories, to see what was being told. Very few people are allowed in there. And in my opinion, that just shows that they don't want information being released to the public. So
so when we talk about, like, conspiracies in general, the 9/11 stuff is usually those people are called truthers, or at least that's where the word came from. I was wondering, do you feel comfortable with the word truther for Sandy Hook? And also, when we talk about conspiracies, you mentioned a number of them, 9/11 being one of the major ones that people are familiar with, the 9/11 truth movement. There's also like moon landing hoax believers. There's people who deny the Holocaust happened. Are you in that same camp? Do you deny the Holocaust, for instance, or that we didn't land on the moon?
No, I certainly don't deny the Holocaust.
Okay.
I mean, all they have to do is look at the Nuremberg trials to figure out what happened there. But I do actually believe firmly that the American government brought over Nazi scientists through a CIA operation called Paperclip, where they were given jobs in government and science, industry, technology, and the American government were actually learning the same techniques that they were using in the concentration camps to exterminate the Jews. They were actually implementing the same sciences into American technology.
Okay.
And that's well documented. That's fact.
So when we talk about Sandy Hook in particular, people who I guess have conspiracy theories related to Sandy Hook, it's a multifaceted. There's multiple, I guess, wings of that conspiracy. Some people think that this was completely staged, that it never actually happened, that the people on television, crying about children were actors. There's people who think that it was like set up by the Obama administration to grab, to
take guns or to sell more guns. Right,
things like that. So where do you come down on the conspiracy? Where on that scale, I guess, are you?
The fact of the matter is, as I even stated in my documentary, I don't exactly accuse an exact person. I can't identify a person responsible for what the evidence shows for Sandy Hook and why people think that it's a conspiracy. The thing I point out in the documentary is that there were off-duty tactical agents arrested that were running from police on Crestwood, and that right there is pretty, that's a red flag right there, when there's an off-duty tactical officer running away from police and then they get detained. And on the police audio recording, that's where a lot of the evidence can be found. You can clearly hear officers detaining suspects. And, I mean, it's normal for agents, or for authorities anyways, to arrest anybody who seems suspicious in the area.
Sure.
Which explains why Chris Manfredonia was detained. He was a parent of one of the children there. That explains that. But what the government has not focused on in the media and explained to the public, and the public deserves to know, is why there was an off-duty tactical officer that was arrested, brought to the police car, and put in the front seat of the police car. And he was detained in the front seat of the police car, not the back seat. So that shows that, okay, this person had some sort of status. And there's a witness that went on the news. You could see video footage of him saying this. His name is Roy Lowe. He identified the suspect. He described what he was wearing, and he said that he was sitting in the front of the police car. Now, this is more than likely the off-duty tactical officer that was reported being detained, because he was in the front of the police car. You know what I mean? So
sure. Do you know what
makes sense? That's my assumption. You know what I mean? Until the government or the media actually addresses this fact, and we're not seeing that. You know what I mean? There's a gag order put in place, and nobody's explaining who that guy was, why he was there, why he was running, and why he was an agent. You know what I mean?
People are in the chat room saying right now he was a cop.
Do you know that? I mean,
from another district. He wasn't from. They didn't say what district he was from either, but he was not from that jurisdiction. He was from another jurisdiction, and he was not dressed as a tactical officer, so he was not on duty. He was running from the police, and he got detained.
Okay, so
that's the fact.
Yeah. So do you know? I mean, I guess so. So we have, a situation going on where obviously there's a lot of confusion, like you said. I mean, this kind of stuff happens where people get detained and things like that.
Well, there's obvious confusion because we're not being told by the authorities or the media or the government about this.
So let's
people are going to ask
stick
questions.
with that. Let's stick with that point then, Mark. There's a lot of confusion going on. You said that people are getting detained that have nothing to do with it, like you're talking about that parent, for instance. Do we know this off-duty officer that you were mentioning? Do we know what ended ended up happening with that? I mean, is he in jail? Is he was he released?
That's a very important question right there. What I've learned from this is that the authorities may still have that suspect in custody, and they're not releasing the information to jeopardize the case, the ongoing case. Now, that's the one thing about Sandy Hook, is it's still an ongoing investigation, apparently. Sure. However, they still are sticking to Adam Lanza was the only person involved. He was the only one. That's what we know, right? That's what they've been telling us.
Sure.
So that's the story that mainstream media is sticking to, and all these people that are trying to debunk this are saying, yeah, it was Adam Lanza, he was crazy, he was on medication, and he snapped one day, and he stole his mother's guns and went to the school and shot up a bunch of people, a bunch of children. That's what the media is saying. However, they're not focusing on this other suspect who's been detained. We're hearing very little about that. I did hear a report that there is another suspect that they didn't say if he was in custody or if he was still at large. However, like I've heard a lot of different things. There was also a van that was a suspect vehicle with people dressed as nuns in nun outfits and wearing ski masks, and they were thought to be involved with the shooting. And they were looking for these suspects well into the afternoon. And from what I've been told, there was a helicopter that actually managed to find this van and followed it into another city. I believe it was the New York area, followed it to that area, and, you know, I've heard people say that they were Mossad agents, you know what I mean? There's a lot of questionable aspects that people are still looking into to try to figure out who these people were. You know, I'm not going to say if it was Mossad because I don't know 100%, but, you know, there's all these theories coming up now about other suspects that were involved, not just the off-duty tactical officer.
Going back to the off-duty tactical officer, I mean, do you believe...
There was also other suspects, too, that were detained around the same time, indicating that there was a group of people running. So, you know what I mean? If it was a group of people, then there was more than one agent that was detained, and we just weren't told about it. And that's another thing. They only released the identities of two suspects. Chris Manfredonio was one of them, and the other was the off-duty tactical officer. His identity actually wasn't revealed. They just said that he was an officer. Okay. And there was other suspects that were also detained that you can hear on the police audio, but we didn't hear about who they were. They didn't release that information to the public.
And do you have any speculation of what, for instance, what did this off-duty tactical officer play in the role of the Sandy Hook shooting? Do you think that he was involved somehow with the actual shooting or setting it up or what?
There's a lot of people that think that it was all staged, you know what I mean? That nobody really died, that it was just like a mock drill or something like that, and it turned into like what people would seem like a real scenario. That's one theory that a lot of people have, but I don't believe that because I've seen like countless people, you know, in anguish over this from that town, and people have even went there. And there's a lot of anger from the families of the victims, and people that know these people. When you look at the records of the school, even, you know what I mean. They had classes. You can go on the website and look, and you could see that there's pictures of children in the school, actual children, living people that have lives, and there's actual funerals. You know what I mean. Noah Posner had an open casket. You know what I mean. In my documentary, there's also a few facts that I pointed out that at the time. That was the conclusion I came to, but later they were found to be like not accurate. Like I did say that all the children had closed caskets in the documentary because at the time that's the information. Actually, I read a couple news reports that stated that they were all closed caskets, so, which is why I reported that in the documentary. But later it was said that Noah Posner. The Posner family had an open casket, and the mayor saw the body, too.
Yeah, so you would definitely agree that there's certain elements of the Sandy Hook conspiracy that are extreme and not based in fact. Because, like, I mean, you said yourself, you can find some of this information and find out some of those conspiracy theories aren't true, but yet there are still, of course, factions of the Sandy Hook truthers, or whatever you want to call them, that don't seem to be basing any of their theories in fact. They hear something and they kind of stick with that. Would you at least agree that that's true, that there's extreme elements of this that you don't have a part in?
Like, what do you mean extreme elements?
Like you said, like we were talking about, you know, that the whole thing was completely fabricated, that the children, that there really were no children that died, and there was just actors on TV. You would agree that stuff is extreme, not based in any factual information.
Yeah, I don't subscribe to that.
Okay. So
I don't subscribe to the crisis actor theory. I do believe that there are certain people put into place to kind of cover this up, to cover up the fact that there were agents taken. These people were planted in the media. They were planted, like Anderson Cooper is a perfect example. He was actually, brought up by the CIA. You could look at his history, and he was involved with the CIA. He was actually wanting to become an agent for quite some time, and then he decided to go into the media business. And when he did that, he received training from the CIA before he did that. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with Project Mockingbird, CIA project, where they infiltrated the media. And there's documented evidence. There was trials held for agents influencing the media in the 70s, I believe. And this is, they've obviously evolved since then, since the 70s. Like, we're living in a new day and age where the intelligence agencies are so powerful that they've infiltrated nearly every facet of life as we know it. They've infiltrated media, they've infiltrated industry. There's all sorts of things, like, you know what I mean, the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, like ATF. There's all these agencies have their own agendas, but they're all pretty much overseen, like, you know what I mean? They receive funding from the same sources and all that stuff, but there is a lot of crooked people within these establishments. So, in my opinion, like, a lot of the people in the media that were reporting false stories were fed false information on purpose to deter the public from looking into certain aspects.
But what would be the purpose of that, I guess, would be my question. Like, why would the government...
Confusion is a smokescreen, really. It's worked really well, I'd say.
So, and what would they cut?
A lot of people.
So a
lot of people think what didn't even happen. You know what I mean?
Right,
and that's causing a lot of pressure on people that do question the official story, no matter what their theory is.
So if the government creates a smoke screen with Sandy Hook, for instance, what would be the smoke?
Not so much with Sandy Hook, just the reporting on the false facts that were presented by the media. Because all these media sources were saying our law enforcement officials or federal officials gave us this information. They always say that at the beginning of the report.
Okay.
Our federal officials told us that there was 4 handguns inside of the school. You know what I mean?
So sure. Let me just get this straight. So you believe that the Sandy Hook shooting really did take place, but what you're saying and what you're trying to portray through your documentary is that the information that we are getting about Sandy Hook isn't the real story?
Some of it is, some of it isn't. That's the purpose of misinformation. You know what I mean? So some of it's obviously you can't really argue with. You know what I mean? Some of it you can. So it's hard to say really, but I definitely believe that there was more than one person involved in this. Adam Lanza was not the only one involved, and in fact, I don't even think Adam Lanza really did the shooting. His Social Security death index was originally stated as being on December 13th, and that's from the Genealogy Bank website. So that's like an official source for people's Social Security death index. And for them to post on their website, which is documented on my documentary, actually, you could see it right on my documentary, for them to say that he died on the 13th and then later change the website and say that it's on the 14th, that's very questionable in my opinion.
And I can understand that. I know that sometimes even when I've created a blog in WordPress, it will have, if depending on how it's configured, I can have a date from the day before actually. I can go back and change it then, and I don't know if that's what happened there, but
that's one thing.
One possibility.
I might even go back and edit the documentary that I made, because there is a few points, like you just said, where you can actually upload content to a website and then change the date later on. That is something that I'll agree to, you know what I mean?
Sure.
If somebody can debunk something in my documentary and show me the proof and the evidence to say, okay, well, you were wrong about this, I'm perfectly fine with accepting that. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
but there's still a vast majority of information in that documentary that you can't refute, that needs to be addressed, and that's the stuff that we really need to focus on.
Well, using that same logic, though, I mean, why wouldn't you just assume that Adam was the sole shooter without any proof that there were other, individuals doing the shooting.
We have about as much proof that Adam Lanza did the shooting as we do that there was other people involved.
Well, we have a dead body, don't we?
It's the exact... Have you seen the body? I haven't.
Well, then this gets into a whole other discussion, then, isn't it? Anything we haven't seen, we just have to, I guess, assume that it didn't happen.
Yes.
I mean, have you ever seen the dead Jews at the Holocaust? Then we can go back to the Holocaust discussion. I mean, I know you don't deny the Holocaust, but I've never seen the dead Jews personally, so how do I know that they're real?
Did you see the videos of the skeletal figures that were detained in camps?
How do I know those weren't fake? I mean, I've never
been misinformation from the news.
I guess that's my perspective. Like, I'm not saying that it was fake, and I know that you're not saying that the Holocaust is fake.
Those people look pretty sick, and the government actually documented a lot of that. So,
sure.
You know what I mean? We do have evidence.
So you do trust the government as long as they have video, basically? Well,
video could be used as evidence.
Okay.
Also documentation. But again, like, that's the thing, you know what I mean? That's why there is such a thing as skeptics, is because this, you really have to dig to get proof about anything, really.
Okay.
And a lot of times proof is given, obviously, and a lot of times you just got to look for the evidence and try to piece it together on your own. And then when you do come up with these theories or speculations, then it's up to you to find the evidence to prove that. You know what I mean? Which is exactly what I've tried to do in that documentary. It's an investigative journalist documentary.
Right. And just so people know, if they're just tuning in, we're talking to Mark Howitt. The documentary is called Sandy Hook, the documentary. They can check it out at worldpublicunion.org, which is Mark's website. Mark, let me ask you a question that Bobby kind of alluded to a little bit ago. Obviously, you're saying there's a lot of misinformation out there about Sandy Hook, and that you're saying that some of these false stories that come out, they're kind of like a smokescreen. I guess my question would be, and I think Bobby kind of alluded to this, is what would be the purpose of the misinformation? What would the government be trying to conceal? If they're, I guess to me, if they were just trying to conceal that there was more than one shooter, I guess I just don't understand why that would be such a big deal. Would there be like a larger conspiracy maybe involved that they're trying to conceal? Or I guess
they're trying so hard to conceal it, then it seems to me that maybe they have a part in it.
Okay.
Why else would they be trying so hard to cover it up?
But then why would the government want to be going in to assassinate children?
Like, for all I can, this is another thing, too. Barack Obama, the president, probably, I wouldn't say probably, but, because I don't have proof of this, unless he admits it, but he might not even know about who did this. But it could be an agent, people, members of his own government that did it.
Do you think...
Because he's even said that the American government has a lot of moving parts.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's hard for him to control and oversee the whole operation of everything.
Sure, I totally agree with that.
NSA.
Yeah.
What's that?
I said I totally agree with that. There's obviously a lot of moving parts, and the president, as much as people might like to believe it, is not privy to everything. That's just the facts. But I was going to ask you, do you think that maybe one of the problems with not just the Sandy Hook conspiracy, but like conspiratorial thinking in general, I guess, is that, and we'll use the Sandy Hook one as an example here, but that there's so many different theories and so many different stories that different conspiracy theorists are all banking on as the true, so many people have different elements of the story that they think are true, and there's so many different conspiracy theories involved that, a lot of this stuff's got to be wrong. I mean, it can't all be right. So do you think maybe that's one of the problems with conspiratorial thinking in general? But
here's the thing, though.
Sure.
The general public doesn't trust the government anymore.
I agree with that, sure.
That's why there's more likes on my documentary than dislikes. And a lot of the information that's kind of related to this has more likes than dislikes. And the reason why is because people don't trust the government anymore. They don't trust the media anymore. People are starting to make their own news sources and write their own news articles about the truth that they find because, you know what I mean? We're just getting sick and tired of being lied to.
But at the same time, like Barack Obama's YouTube videos get a lot more likes too. So how do we know that people don't trust Barack Obama? I guess if we're just going by YouTube likes and Facebook likes and things like that.
Yeah, I guess it depends who's interested in that kind of material, you know what I mean?
Sure.
But, from any news report that I've read even, there's a lot of even questioning of the government going on from mainstream media, from certain reporters in the mainstream media, you know what I mean? When something happens, they're even questioning the government. So there's a lot of people that just are sick and tired of being lied to and not being told what's happening. What we really need is glass walls in government buildings.
Okay,
that's what we need.
I still want to know though, like, you know, through your personal investigation of the Sandy Hook tragedy, I really haven't got an answer as to why would the government be involved in the assassination of children.
Well, they've done it in other countries. It's not just Sandy Hook, and it's been happening for a long time.
But what would be the purpose for the government to go into a school?
They could do it easily, and the purpose would be to essentially tighten up gun control, to essentially maybe even ban all firearms, like what they've done in other countries. And I see this as potentially being linked to the United Nations as well, because they've been on this mission to disarm the whole planet.
Okay.
That's what they're trying to do, is disarm every country that they possibly can. And America's not going down without a fight, and that's why we're seeing this in the media a lot, because there's people that just don't agree with that.
Okay.
And it's just, with these shootings, this spree of shootings where multiple suspects were identified by many witnesses, and even video evidence, police audio recording evidence saying that there's more than one suspect. That's with the James Holmes case, with the Sikh temple shooting, with Sandy Hook. So you're getting all these shootings in a 1-year time span, 2012. So you're getting all these shootings that are clustered together really closely, where there's multiple suspects that weren't detained, they escaped, and the person who is said to have done the shooting is always ends up dead, or their brain is erased.
Isn't that what usually happens in mass shootings? In mass shootings, doesn't the person, like, what was it? I can't remember the name of the guy who went to the University of Texas and started picking people off. Was it Charles Whitmore or something like that? I can't remember. But don't these people usually end up dead? Either it's kind of like a suicide by cop thing where they end up killing themselves.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a majority of them that do, for sure.
Yeah.
But the question I have is, why did all these shootings happen in such a short time span, and why did they all have multiple suspects?
Like Columbine, for instance, or?
That's before this.
Well,
like Columbine,
if we're talking about mass shootings, then obviously that would be one of them.
As one of the ones that you're talking about, for instance, the Colorado theater shooting?
Exactly. I even made a documentary about that one, the James Holmes Conspiracy, it's called.
Yeah.
And that one there as well, multiple suspects, even the police on the police audio recording saying that there's still a person that wasn't detained. There's tons of witnesses saying, yeah, okay, well, I'm scared right now because the police officer just told me there's someone on the loose.
Yeah.
While they say that they had James Holmes just sitting peacefully beside his vehicle in the back of the theater. Now, they haven't released video footage of how he got in through the back of the theater. There's also tons of evidence showing that he couldn't have really got in because there's the back door locks. Like, you'd have to let yourself in. So somebody was sitting in the front aisle of the theater, they received a phone call, they left, and then all of a sudden someone comes in and starts shooting. Now they're saying that was James Holmes, but they haven't shown us the phone call record.
Isn't it possible that
where'd that call come from, you know?
Isn't it possible that he just went out the exit that's right there at the front of the theater and put something there to keep the door from closing all the way?
Yeah, he could have maybe done that. You know what I mean? He could have maybe done that. But the thing is, there was also 2 gas masks found. One was found on the other end of the theater in the back parking lot, and he was detained almost instantaneously in the back of the theater.
Okay.
So he wouldn't have had time to run all the way to the other end of the parking lot, drop a gas mask, run to his car while he's still wearing a gas mask, because in the police report, the officer that finds Holmes standing beside his car said he was in a gas mask.
Okay. Right. So we had a guy...
So 2 gas masks, multiple suspects, the police saying that there's somebody still on the loose, and then the Sikh temple shooting, same thing. Everyone that was at that scene, what happened, said that there was other people. They said there was up to 4 suspects.
Okay.
Now, we were told that only one person did it, and that he was killed. James Holmes has not entered a plea either for Aurora. He hasn't entered a plea because he claims that he doesn't remember the shooting, you know what I mean? And he's even apparently told another inmate that he was programmed by a psychiatrist You know what I mean? And his psychiatrist has ties to the government in military operations and stuff like that. So, you know, and if you look at the RFK case with Sirhan, same thing. He was programmed, and there's evidence showing now that's recently came to light that he couldn't have been the only one doing the shooting.
Well,
so,
I want to get back.
And CIA agents were in there, as proven by video footage from the Ambassador Hotel inside that David Morales, CIA agent, also involved with the JFK case, was inside the building looking around, making sure that the operation went smoothly.
Now you said that the possible conspiracy is that the misinformation given off by the federal agents to the media. Wouldn't you think that if they, or what would be your response to if they were smart enough to come up with this plan to, you know, go into this elementary school and assassinate children, possibly to tighten up gun control, wouldn't they have enough brains to get the story straight before they went out and executed this to give to the media? Like, why would the media be feeding different stories? Why would they be getting different stories from the federal agents if they weren't doing this like on a whim, I guess? I mean, wouldn't you think they would be smart enough to come up with one story and stick to that story?
Yeah, like if members of some sort of agency or some covert operation were responsible for this, which I believe they were, then they would want to tell the media, you know, weird, strange stories to get them to report to the public about something that doesn't have anything to do with what really happened. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it's kind of distracting the information. And a lot of this information, mind you, was put out right away at the beginning of the investigation.
Okay.
So you could say, okay, well, the media just didn't have their story straight. You know what I mean? They didn't have the facts. They were just trying to get out the information as fast as possible, and it wasn't really valid information. But that can't be proven because these reporters at the beginning of these reports were saying our federal authorities tell us that, or our local law enforcement officials tell us that, and then they give the report.
Okay.
And the report is false, according to today's evidence that's come to light, or what the government is saying that actually happened.
So let me ask you this, Mark. We had a guy on the show maybe a year or so back. His name was Ted Gertzel, and he's a sociology professor at Rutgers, and he had written a cover story in Skeptical Inquirer about, I guess he was kind of mainly focusing on the 9/11 conspiracy theories, but he was also focusing on, you know, he was using that to illustrate conspiratorial thinking in general. And what he was telling us on the show was that it seems like the larger the conspiracy would be, you know, I guess the more people that would have to be in on it for it to have happened, the less likely it would be to be true. Because, you know, a small conspiracy, obviously, someone might slip, you know, somebody slips up or whatever, somebody tells the truth or whatever, but the more people are in on it, the more likely it is that someone's going to either have an ulterior motive or slip up or tell their story, or someone finds out about it, like, you know, their wife or their brother or whatever finds out about it, and then the story leaks out. With the Sandy Hook massacre, if this was a conspiracy, if there's more than one person involved and the federal government's involved in it, you said that the United Nations might even have something to do with it. This is hundreds, if not thousands, if not, you know, tens of thousands of people maybe in on it. Do you think that
it wouldn't have to be thousands? All it would take would be a group of people, like let's just say one person from the United Nations who wants to disarm America. You know what I mean? And he's had enough. He really wants to disarm them, and because their attempts haven't been working, he's like, okay, I'm going to do something about it. I know this guy from the ATF, and he's pretty cool, you know what I mean? He's going to keep his mouth shut about this, so I'm going to get together with him. And I know another guy from FEMA, and we know, let's just say, Lieutenant Vance from the local Connecticut State Police. So
you think it would be like a series of lone wolves in different organizations?
Plan this out, and then they hire a team to do it, and then the team is either killed off, which usually is what happens when they have people like, look at Lee Harvey Oswald, the CIA agent, who was involved with very sensitive studies with the government, and he was killed off within 2 days by Jack Ruby, who also had connections with the government and the mafia. So, you know what I mean? With the JFK case, it's a perfect example of how they could do this, because the JFK assassination, there was a few teams involved of people, and these teams weren't really aware of the other team.
So you think this is
they
like...
They weren't even aware of it. They were just hired separately by the higher-ups in the operation. So
it sounds like you think that there was just like a series of lone wolves in several different organizations that have like a...
Possibly banded together.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was likely a group of people that I can't be sure. I'm not going to say it was a CIA agent or anything like that in particular, but for something like this to happen, it would have to be a small group of people, that band together and kind of plot this out and plan for everything to happen, which would kind of, and they would have to know about this well in advance, you know what I mean? It would have had to have been planned in advance, which would kind of explain why there was FEMA training camps happening, like as I explained in my documentary, the same day, right near Sandy Hook, there was a FEMA drill going on for children, planning for emergencies regarding children. You know what I mean?
Sure. So
and that's kind of questionable that they were holding these events prior to the shooting happening.
Okay.
Then you have Eric Holder. Eric Holder is that guy's, I don't know, like Fast and Furious. That's all I have to say about that guy.
So let me ask you this.
There's evidence right there. And
okay. So let me ask you this. Is there anything, you obviously believe there's a lot more to the Sandy Hook incident than perhaps we do. But is there...
It's not just Sandy Hook, though. It's huge.
Right, but we brought you on the show to talk about the Sandy Hook documentary in general. I mean, the show's only, we got about like 5 minutes left here. We don't have time to go into every single conspiracy ever, but... as far as Sandy Hook in general, I guess, specifically, is there anything, I guess, is there a piece of evidence that you could see that would convince you, I guess, that, well, maybe this did happen at least close to the official story and it's not a far-ranging conspiracy? Is there a piece of evidence or something that you're looking for that would convince you?
You mean, like, is there something that would convince me that, okay, Adam Lanza was the only person involved?
Yeah, something to that effect, yeah.
No. Not at this time, because the vehicle that he drove to the school had all 4 doors open. There was 2 sweaters found on the floor beside the vehicle, and the police also, the authorities and the media, are not telling us about that. The car doors were open, as witnesses have claimed. A parent of one of the children at the school saw all 4 doors in the car open, and later, in the images we saw, the doors were closed. So they didn't tell us about that. That's tampering with evidence. Also, there was a shotgun removed from the trunk of the vehicle at night, where the officer was not wearing any gloves. So we destroyed evidence by tampering with the shotgun. They've been destroying evidence all along, hiding things. You know what I mean? So this is also Adam Lanza's death report from the day before. The media telling us that Adam and his mother used to go to shooting range lessons, but that there was no records or reports at all that exist of her ever going to any shooting range. The weapons that she had were essentially harder to get firearms. For the most part, and you know what I mean? Like, I just see this, there's so many questions that need to be answered, and there's so much evidence out there proving that what the government is saying happened is a lie.
Yeah, and here's where we agree, Mark. Here's where we definitely agree. When you talk about, like, a lot of misinformation coming from the media, early on and everything, and, different people reporting different things, that I totally agree with. I mean, that not only happens in major issues with like Sandy Hook or Aurora or that kind of thing, but that even happens like if multiple witnesses see the same car accident, 10 people might see it and 10 people see different things. So I guess where we totally agree there that misinformation came up from the media. For instance, at first it was Ryan Lanza who was the shooter. I remember that specifically.
Yeah.
So yeah,
they even arrested him.
Yeah, right. They definitely.
But there's also reports that they invaded a house in New Jersey and found a body.
Wow. So yeah, there's all these reports that come out and everything, and I totally agree that a lot of different information comes out at the beginning. I kind of more attribute that to just a lot of wrong stories coming up in the media. I guess kind of
they're trying to get it,
trying to scoop each other. Yeah. So that's kind of where I fall in, is I think maybe they're just trying to scoop each other and
But why would they say that it was federal officials that gave them the information?
It might have been.
Yeah, it might have been. I mean,
it is.
Yeah, so
it's not might.
So it's not a lie then.
The news reports with the misinformation in it that's what they say at the beginning of the report.
Yeah. I don't disagree with you. I just think that.
Can I just give a quick scenario here? I mean,
sure.
The reason why the car situation doesn't really impress me is, okay, say that I'm known and I'm mentally ill, okay, and I'm going to a location, and you got to remember that I'm off my meds. I don't find it weird that all 4 car doors would be open, nor do I find it weird that there's more than one piece of clothing in the car, because my back seat right now has like 4 T-shirts from when I go work out.
Like a bunch of pizza boxes, too.
Yeah, I mean, that doesn't, just because they found 2 pieces of clothing and all doors open up doesn't mean that there was more than one shooter.
Well, if it would make sense with the people running in that were detained, the off-duty officers that we don't know about because they're too afraid to tell us who they were. That's a red flag right there, you know what I mean? So if there was more than one person, they would obviously be running away from the scene after the shooting, which is what happened. And Adam Lanza, with the amount of ammunition that he was said to have had, plus all those firearms going into the school and firing off with that much accuracy in that amount of time, that's almost near impossible. Like, for somebody of his mental status, his physical shape to do.
Wouldn't
not
you
sure
agree
if you're
that...
familiar. Have you guys listened to the Mike Powers interview on the Joyce Riley show?
Have not, no.
You should definitely look at that because he's got people that are that are like professionals with analyzing ballistic evidence, forensic evidence. He's working really closely with these people to unleash all the evidence that's out there to prove that Adam Lanza couldn't have done that.
Well, we certainly
just
look forward
from the sound alone, from firing off the rounds, he would have blasted his eardrums. You know what I mean? And then after this evidence was presented, after Mike Powers unveiled this, the government is claiming that he had earbuds in his ears. So that's why his ears didn't get blown.
Look, we definitely look forward to that being proven. We definitely look forward to that being proven because, as you said, right now it's early in the investigation. It seems like you have like dozens of different ideas of what could possibly have happened. We're looking forward to somebody proving.
There's been enough time in the gag order set in place that they could fabricate anything by now.
Yeah, so
they could be fabricating video evidence to show us.
And there we go. So see, we're back to the giant conspiracy again. And now we're fabricating video evidence. Different, people are coming in, touching the shotgun without gloves. It seems like you do think there was a vast conspiracy. It didn't have to be just a few people.
I wouldn't say a vast conspiracy where there's thousands of people involved. Definitely not.
Okay.
But I would say that there's the shooters that were involved, the people that were running away, and whoever their superiors were.
Okay.
Whoever their commanding unit was. You know what I mean?
Speaking of how much ammunition and how many guns that Adam Lanza had, that actually makes more sense to the car doors being open and not closed because he had to go through each door to open it up to grab a duffel bag or whatever, and he didn't have time to close the doors. I mean, I just some of these pieces of evidence don't sound that compelling. I guess is what I'm trying to say. I mean, because there was a tactical officer picked up. He was
several suspects actually.
I mean, I guess I don't see. I mean, a suspect doesn't mean that you're part of the shooting.
Exactly. It just means that you were there and you were detained for questioning. So if they didn't have anything to hide, then why don't we know about who these people were? The only person that I've heard of that they've released information about is Chris Manfredonia, who's a parent. Right. That's fine, okay. But then another report was that it was an off-duty tactical officer. That's 2. Now, I've counted 7 in total, 7 suspects that were on the police audio. That's the people in the van that also escaped. That could have been the getaway van that was on Crestwood, because that's where the other suspects were detained. And Crestwood is a perfect way to run away from the school and get to the highway quickly.
Yeah. So it looks like we're just...
look at it on a map.
Absolutely. So we've been talking to Mark Howitt. Mark, we're just about out of time here with you. Thanks for making time with us today. Again, check out Sandy Hook, the documentary, if you're interested. And the website is at World Public Union. That's www.worldpublicunion.org. It seems like we have a lot of could-have and things like that. One day, hopefully, we'll have a coherent, solid solid theory, I guess, based on facts and investigation, and then we can present that. But as of right now, it's not too compelling. There's just too many different stories. But definitely
hopefully
appreciate.
One day the government and the actual authorities that are claimed to be investigating this case actually do their job and actually take a look at some of these things that people are saying. Not all of them, obviously, but some of them. The important factors, anyways.
Well, the truth is,
That's what it's going to take to get clarity.
A lot of those government officials are really lizards in disguise, though.
Yeah, apparently.
All right, take it easy, Mark. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely.
Cheers.
Top of the hour, we'll be talking to Mark Howitt about Sandy Hook.
Sandy Hook.
The documentary.
Sandy Hook.
Stay tuned.
Thank you.
All I wish is to be alone. Stay away. Don't you invade my home. Best off if you hang outside. Don't come in alone.
Welcome back, everybody, to Strange Frequencies Radio. In the wake of the tragedy at Sandy Hook Elementary in Newtown, Connecticut, some have expressed concern that the public is not being told the whole truth. We're joined today by Mark Howitt, a Canadian activist, musician, and documentary filmmaker. He's the founder of the World Public Union, a global activist movement formed, he says, to give the power back to the people of the world. His documentaries, such as RFK, Bloodline Assassins, and the James Holmes Conspiracy, have been recommended by people like David Icke, Dan Dix, and Joyce Riley. This year he released Sandy Hook, the documentary, which currently has well over 100,000 views on YouTube. You can check out the documentary as well as find more information about Mark's work at the World Public Union website, which is located at www.worldpublicunion.org. Mark, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. So someone doesn't just wake up one day and decide that there's a conspiracy involving Sandy Hook, or that 9/11 didn't happen the way it looked like. Can you give us a little bit of an idea of, I guess, the journey you've taken to think that major events like this were not being told the whole truth, or that there's gaps in our understanding?
Well, there's a long history of government putting up walls when it comes to certain cases and information regarding events. This has been going on for a long time. It's not anything new. So when people see, either the media telling us false information or not giving us all the facts, another red flag is a gag order. As soon as a gag order is put in place, automatically you can kind of come to the conclusion that, okay, well, there's sensitive information here. They don't want people investigating this information or what's happened. So it happened for me, actually, like you said, with 9/11. I was a bit younger at the time, and when that happened, I was pretty shocked with what I was seeing on the TV and the news reports. So I started keeping a close eye on that case and the news reports that were coming in. And it didn't take long when I started to notice the discrepancies that the media were saying in the government. And, you start to see evidence like the explosions that were heard in the basement of the buildings before the planes actually hit. And there's all this evidence with 9/11 that just, that I would say it's evidence, you know what I mean? It's clear evidence that could be used in a court of law that would convict somebody of wrongdoing or conspiracy, because, let's face it, if there's something like this happening, there would have to be more than one person involved. Okay. And that's what we're seeing with the Sandy Hook case as well. The media was reporting information on the event that wasn't adding up to the actual evidence that we know of today. So there was a lot of people that were questioning the Sandy Hook event, as well as the James Holmes, actually, as well, in Aurora. Okay. There's a lot, and the JFK assassination, Robert Kennedy's assassination. You've got Jonestown, you've got Waco, you've got Ruby Ridge, you've got all these events that have happened. And
9/11 stuff is usually, those people are called truthers, or at least that's where the word came from. I was wondering, do you feel comfortable with the word truther for Sandy Hook? And also, when we talk about conspiracies, you mentioned a number of them, 9/11 being one of the major ones that people are familiar with, the 9/11 truth movement. There's also like moon landing hoax believers. There's people who deny the Holocaust happened. Are you in that same camp? Do you deny the Holocaust, for instance, or that we didn't land on the moon?
No, I certainly don't deny the Holocaust.
Okay.
I mean, all they have to do is look at the Nuremberg trials to figure out what happened there. But I do actually believe firmly that the American government brought over Nazi scientists through a CIA operation called Paperclip, where they were given jobs in government and science, industry, technology, and the American government were actually learning the same techniques that they were using in the concentration camps to exterminate the Jews. They were actually implementing the same sciences into American technology.
Okay.
And that's well documented. That's fact.
So when we talk about Sandy Hook in particular,
and we've been lied to by the government or the authorities, law enforcement agencies and stuff like that, and the evidence is there. So I just keep a close eye on this stuff, and I like to make documentaries and kind of document it, because a lot of people like watching videos as opposed to reading these days. Sure. So it's a good medium to be able to, do an investigation and show people the information that you found. So
somebody in the chat room just said that the only thing a gag order refers to is that people don't discuss it before a jury hears it. So you want to comment on that?
Well, there's a media gag order where news agencies, medias are not allowed to, they don't release information from the courts, where the actual trial and proceedings are very secretive. You know what I mean? So that's what's happening with the James Holmes case. Actually, the media were not allowed to go into the court anymore to listen to the stories, to see what was being told. Very few people are allowed in there. And in my opinion, that just shows that they don't want information being released to the public. So
when we talk about like conspiracies in general, the 9/11